Sounds of a struggle pierce a quiet Chicago morning.
They sound like they're really fighting over in the next apartment. They're screaming.
She calling for help or just yelling?
A missing person investigation uncovers a storybook romance riddled with hidden desires.
Your love life should never be a secret. People need to know who you're with.
It was a juicy mystery that captivated everyone.
The guy was walking his dog. His dog came back with a human skull.
We found the skull in one area. We found the upper torso in another area.
To find a body like that is definitely something out of a horror movie.
Why would she have to suffer so much?
He was leading a double life, and no one saw that coming.
September 2000. It's a crisp fall day in Chicago, and on the south side of town, the close-knit Todd family gathers for a birthday party. Conspicuously absent is one beloved family member, 34-year-old Traci Todd.
Traci and her mother and her family was planning a birthday party for her nephew, and Traci didn't show up.
Cake!
Have you heard from her?
No, I haven't talked to her in a minute.
Traci was always punctual, always in contact with her friends, spoke to her mom regularly.
Trying not to worry, Traci's family hoped she got called in to sub for a fellow flight attendant.
They just kind of assumed that she had flew out. You know, maybe she had gotten called, a last-minute call that happens with flight attendants.
I see. Hey, Mom, stop worrying about Traci. Hey, that girl is probably out in Jamaica with her new boyfriend or something.
Exactly. You're probably right.
But as the days pass, Traci's parents grow increasingly worried.
Her friends and family did check the hospitals. They called around, they checked with friends, and nothing came of it.
Traci's father and stepmom contact the airline where she works, hopeful they can shed some light on her whereabouts. Unfortunately, that's not the case.
What? She didn't show.
All right, let's not think the worst. Okay.
She didn't show up for work then, and that's when everyone realized something serious had happened to her.
You say, oh, wait a minute, you know, this doesn't happen. It started to sink in that, hey, something is wrong here.
On September 21st, Traci's mother, Gloria Todd, heads to Traci's apartment in search of answers.
Her mom went to her building to go check on her, and that's when someone at the building allows the mother to go into Traci's apartment. She walks in, she sees a couple things that are unusual. She sees a flight attendant uniform laid out on the bed and a suitcase on the bed.
Her personal items were still in her apartment, her ID, her purse, her pager.
Something's wrong.
It just felt weird to Traci's mother. It was like she was getting ready to go somewhere and just disappeared.
The next day, the Chicago Police Department opens a missing persons report on Traci. But before they can track down this bright, bubbly Chicago native, they'll come face to face with unadulterated evil.
It is just very, very far-reaching, and it never ends. The pain never goes away.
You know, all of your insides are just drained.
Traci Todd was born in Chicago in 1966 to a large and loving family.
There were 3 boys, 2 girls. Traci, third in line.
She was vibrant and free and loved life. You could tell by her family and how much they loved her.
Growing up, Traci had severe asthma, but that didn't stop her from reaching for her dream of being a world traveler.
She thought about college, and she would have done well there, but her stepmother was a flight attendant, and Traci loved hearing all of her travel stories, and she thought about pursuing the same adventure.
She applied with United. We heard that they were hiring, and she was chosen.
In 1995, just 2 years into her dream job, Traci finally landed her dream home, a high-rise apartment in the up-and-coming Chicago neighborhood of South Loop.
she just really gravitated to this apartment down there, and it proved to be a little castle in the sky.
Oh my God. Well, what do you think? Oh, look at this.
She was in a vibrant area of the city, 34 years of age. There were things to do with her friends, family, co-workers that she would socialize with as well.
She was always laughing and smiling and telling jokes, and very quick-witted.
So happy was Traci with her new life in her new apartment that her friends gave her the nickname Giggles.
She had a really positive aura. You know, you just kind of wanted to be around her. I think she attracted a lot of attention because of that.
Adding to Traci's positive aura were her sizzling good looks.
She was pretty. She was very pretty.
When we used to walk down the street, guys would be looking at her and she'd smile at them. You know, that was Traci.
Although Traci had her pick of gentlemen suitors, she made it clear that she was holding out for Mr. Right. And in August of 1998, she seemed to have met him.
Kevin Williams was an educated, accomplished young man, very handsome, very good looking.
When they first laid eyes on each other, they instantly hit it off.
Kevin was successful. He had all the trappings of success, the way he dressed, car he drove.
He had his own business. Those things draw you to a person. You know, it's definitely enough to kind of make you want to pay this man more attention.
Kevin's main job was rehabilitating houses and then selling them. He was involved in real estate and was able to wine and dine Traci, you know, nice places in the Chicago area.
Over the next 2 years, the relationship flourished.
They were really serious at one point, talking about marriage, you know, talking about that being a real possibility in their future.
Traci's family was also impressed by Kevin's charm, his wealth, and the affection he showered on her.
When I met him, he seemed to be very attentive to her, and he seemed to be very genuinely interested in her and supportive of her.
I would definitely say she was in love, and so was he.
Somewhere along the way, you know, he got the nickname Mr. Wonderful. I think it's because in their eyes, he was wonderful, you know. To Traci, he was probably like the perfect man.
But when Traci goes missing, her and Kevin's picture-perfect life is put on hold. And as the search for Traci escalates, those closest to her will discover that this bubbly flight attendant had been navigating dark and unfamiliar skies, playing a game of love that may have cost her her life.
You just go through a gamut of emotions that's like turbulence that you're going through.
"34-year-old flight attendant Traci Todd has had no contact with friends and family for over a week. So on September 22nd, 2000, her mother Gloria reports her missing to Chicago police.
Gloria had went down to the police station. They actually filed the missing person reports and pushed it, you know.
Have you actually been by her apartment to check it? The apartment was just wrong, and she never leaves without her pager.
Gloria explains to officers what she found in the apartment: Traci's purse, her wallet containing credit cards and an ID, and her pager. And to the family, there is one other small but critical detail: Traci's suitcase on the bed.
May not seem weird to us regular people, but to a flight attendant, that's a big no-no.
Her mom knew that was just not in Traci's character. Flight attendants don't usually leave their suitcases on their bed. Their suitcases are dirty.
Being a flight attendant, you might put it on the suitcase stand, you know, or just have it on the floor, but definitely not on the bed.
But Traci's mother informs police that the suitcase, purse, and pager aren't the only disturbing clues she uncovered at her daughter's apartment.
Well, she's been an asthmatic since she was a little girl. She never leaves her inhaler behind, and I found it in her things.
Maybe she might have had an asthma attack someplace and nobody could find her.
The red flag was already out, but then it was just, hey, police, you're gonna do something. You better do something now.
The Chicago Police Department, when they got involved, they checked with local hospitals. They even called the medical examiner's office to see if there were any unknown bodies there, but that didn't yield any positive results at all.
Which prompts Chicago police to wonder if Traci wanted to disappear.
It's a lot of people that want to get off the grid and kind of just vanish.
When police float this theory to Traci's family, they refuse to believe she would leave town without telling them where she was going.
Traci was a daddy's girl. She would have called me. She's going to stay in touch with family.
And according to Traci's loved ones, she certainly wouldn't go on some extended vacation without the love of her life, Mr. Wonderful, Kevin Williams.
She saw a future with him, possibly marriage with him, which lets us know how serious it was.
Traci was devoted to him. There's no way she would have left town and not told Kevin where she was going.
One day after Traci is reported missing, detectives reach out to Kevin Williams to confirm that he hasn't heard from Traci either. Unfortunately, they get Kevin's voicemail.
Mr. Williams, this is Detective Fleming from the Chicago Police Department. I'm working on a case and I was hoping that you could give me a call.
While awaiting a response from Kevin, detectives comb through recent crime reports in the area. Within minutes, they stumble upon a 911 call that was made the morning of September 14th from a tenant in Traci's building.
I'm a neighbor to this apartment in 705, and they sound like they're really fighting over in the next apartment. They're screaming.
A male and a female, or what?
Yes. And she's really screaming now.
Okay.
You on the way now?
We'll send someone out.
According to dispatch call logs, 2 patrol officers attempted to conduct a wellness check at Traci's apartment shortly after her neighbor called 911.
They rang Traci's buzzer or the neighbor's buzzer, but after they got no response, they turned away and left.
To learn more about what prompted the 911 call, detectives head to Traci's apartment building to speak to her neighbor, Marcellus Henderson, about the incident. According to Marcellus, it all started around 6 a.m.
Traci Todd's next-door neighbor was getting ready for work in the early morning hours, probably about 6 o'clock in the morning, and he hears some arguing in the apartment next door, in Traci's apartment.
It seemed like it was a fight. It was a male voice and a female voice, and the female, well, she screamed.
Did you remember them saying any names or anything distinctive?
Nothing distinct like that. It was more so like a struggle.
It got so violent at one point where there was a thud on the wall that they shared, and it knocked a picture off of his wall.
I told the dispatcher that I would wait around for a little while, but I never got a chance to see the officers because I actually had to go to work.
Given Marcellus's statement and the apparent struggle that occurred in Traci's home, investigators begin to wonder if she was perhaps the victim of a violent home invasion or possibly even kidnapped.
If Traci was kidnapped, this case just got a whole lot harder to solve. It's been more than a week, so Traci, if she's even still alive, could be anywhere in the world by now.
So for that reason, the FBI got involved in this missing person case because it could extend beyond the territorial borders of Chicago and the state of Illinois.
The FBI got a request from the Chicago Police Department asking our evidence response team to become involved, and the first search we did was at Traci's apartment.
The FBI sends in a crack forensics team, and they quickly notice there's no evidence of a home invasion or a break-in.
But there is one item in Traci's apartment that catches the feds' attention.
One thing that sticks out in the apartment was the bottle of carpet cleaner that we were able to find. You might normally find that in any household, but in this case, we didn't know who had been in the apartment, so we collected that bottle to see if we could get any blatant prints.
The feds dust the rest of the apartment for prints and find nothing.
There were no fingerprints, not even Traci's fingerprints could be found inside of the apartment.
This was an apartment that Traci lived in. They couldn't find suitable fingerprints on her door, on the medicine cabinet in the bathroom, kitchen countertops.
Somebody cleaned so much, you know, to cover up something that happened in this apartment that they wiped away not only theirs, you know, but even her fingerprints.
All of a sudden, this suspected missing persons case turns into a potential murder case. It's as if somebody murdered Traci inside that apartment and then tried to cover it up. The million-dollar question is, who would do such a thing? Who wanted Traci Todd dead?
Two weeks after the disappearance of beautiful flight attendant Traci Todd, FBI agents are scouring her Chicago apartment for evidence.
They thought it was odd the whole place seemed to have been wiped down to get rid of any fingerprints.
As they scan the apartment, FBI agents discover one thing that does seem to be missing from the residence.
One of the first things I came across was a stack of pictures that she had on one of her tables. and I come across one of the pictures. It's the same picture as the living room. And on the picture, there's a area rug, and that area rug is now missing.
That missing rug makes them think they need to examine the floor more closely.
We started bringing in our alternate light sources and checking for more latent prints, and seeing the carpet is actually fluorescing, that something was there and had been cleaned.
There is what appears to be a blood stain right inside a hallway that leads to the living area. The stain goes through the carpet, through the padding, all the way to the concrete subfloor.
The forensics team collects multiple portions of the stain and sends them out for testing.
2 of them came back as being positive with human blood.
Using these newly identified blood samples, the lab examiners are also able to develop a DNA profile.
They were able to compare that DNA profile to the DNA profiles of Traci's mom and dad, and that came up with a match of 99.99% probability that that blood stain came from the offspring of her parents.
This suggests that Traci lost a lot of blood there on that rug. So much so that it seeped into the floor below, which most likely means that she was violently attacked, perhaps even murdered in her home.
But even as the DNA profile points to a possible murder rather than kidnapping, federal investigators will need more evidence before they can declare Traci Todd's disappearance a homicide.
To find a large amount of someone's blood is a key that something has happened to this person, but it doesn't prove death.
The more police dig into other theories, the more only one makes sense, that this was personal.
With that in mind, detectives have one objective: finding Traci's boyfriend, Kevin Williams.
He hasn't been available to police. It seems like he must have something to hide.
No sooner have investigators set out in search of Kevin Williams, he voluntarily shows up at police headquarters. But if authorities think he's going to cooperate, they're sorely mistaken.
You're fighting with your girlfriend. She's disappeared. Can't find you. Tell me something.
I'm gonna get a lawyer.
Kevin was instructed to not give any statements to the police. As a defense strategy, it's a very wise and sound strategy in the overwhelming majority of times.
Defense attorneys often advise their clients not to talk to the police, even if they're innocent. Sometimes statements can be taken out of context and used against you. So they think they're going with the safe route by not talking and letting the police do their job.
Despite Kevin Williams' reticence in answering their questions, investigators keep plugging away. And on November 25th, 2000, there's finally a break in the case.
The first big break in the case for the police was just shortly before Thanksgiving of 2000 in Beaubien Woods.
Beaubien Woods Forest Preserve is a standard forest preserve. It's just a recreational area.
A man was walking his dog. The dog found a human skull. The man contacted the police. The skull was inventoried and was brought to the Cook County Medical Examiner's office.
But as the MEs examine the body, it becomes clear someone's gone to great lengths to make the corpse unidentifiable.
There was evidence of a blowtorch taken to her teeth.
By looking at what appeared to be burns on the teeth, it appeared to us as though someone was trying to destroy the dental work in the skull so that that skull could not be identified.
Thankfully for examiners, the skull contains custom dental work that enables them to eventually ID it.
Traci had had some ceramic dental work, and that particular dental work that matched Traci. So they were positively able to say that that skull was Traci Todd's skull.
You go from sadness to anger.
You just can't imagine, unless you've been there, just how horrific your thoughts are.
As Traci's loved ones try to cope with the horror of her passing, evidence response teams from both the FBI and Chicago PD descend on Beaubien Woods.
They want to find her remains, not just her skull. They can find those, then maybe they can figure out how she died.
We completely scoured the entire forest preserve, including a cadaver dog, looking for the remains. And we were ultimately able to find Traci's remains.
Very carefully digging in that area, eventually revealed about 60% of the skeletal remains of Traci Todd's body.
Although the remains are incomplete, they provide enough information for medical examiners to determine cause of death.
They had concluded that she died from strangulation because of the cartilage in the throat that was damaged or broken, which is indicative of strangulation.
But according to the MEs, the brutal cause of death is just the beginning.
The remains we found were completely skeletonized for the most part. They were also showed signs that she had been dismembered.
What was never found were Traci's hands or feet. Clearly, the dismemberment shows that somebody was taking steps to cover up this homicide.
When you're talking about your daughter being cut up into parts, it's a hard pill to swallow. And you just said, why would she have to suffer so much?
There's just no more questions about where she is. Now they know harm has come to her, and now we can move on to trying to catch the killer.
With the crime now officially classified a homicide, the stakes couldn't be higher for investigators. And with Traci's boyfriend, Kevin Williams, still refusing to speak to police, a tip comes in that will turn the entire case upside down.
It turns out Traci's killer may not be Kevin Williams after all.
Detectives were at a point where they didn't know what to believe.
Popular flight attendant Traci Todd's remains have been found in a wooded Chicago park 18 miles from her apartment.
At least we found her remains. Many families never find the remains of their loved ones.
Police have zeroed in on Traci's boyfriend, Kevin Williams, as the prime suspect. But with Kevin not talking, they're going to need something more concrete than mere suspicion. Fortunately, investigators catch a break when Traci's sister unearths an unexpected clue.
Her sister was cleaning out her apartment, packing everything up. And they found a receipt in a shoebox and stuffed in a pair of her shoes.
That receipt was for a local bar, and it was dated for the night of September 13th, 2000, which was the night before Traci Todd disappeared, the night before the argument, the night before the 911 call.
With this receipt, they can start to try and piece together her last night.
They go to this restaurant. There they meet a young lady who clearly remembers waiting on Traci that night. She was on a date and with a very handsome, well-put-together man.
And the server who waited on them describes this man physically. And the man she describes fits Kevin Williams to a T.
If this was Kevin, it puts him as the last person to see Traci alive.
They look at the receipt, they write down the credit card number that's associated with the payment. They run that credit card number. What they find, the number is attached to a card issued to Kevin Williams.
But the credit card receipt isn't all investigators uncover.
Digging through municipal records, they discover a parking ticket that places Kevin's vehicle near Traci's apartment at the time in question.
Kevin's Range Rover had received a parking ticket right outside of Traci Todd's building, basically the morning she disappeared, just a few hours after the 911 call.
The waitress's statement, the credit card receipt from the bar, and the parking ticket all prove Kevin was with Traci the night before she disappeared. But with no physical evidence linking Kevin to the crime, investigators pour into his financial records for clues. It doesn't take long for them to unearth some peculiar information.
During the course of the investigation, the police learn of the mysterious fire at a garage. This came right on the heels within days of Traci disappearing. This garage is located behind a house in Chicago that Kevin owns and rents to some tenants.
There was an insurance investigation, and the insurance carrier refused to pay because the insurance investigation indicated that it was arson.
The FBI dispatches an evidence response team to process the fire-gouged garage.
The evidence response team came out to the scene, but there was nothing left. The debris had all been removed by the time we got there.
Police are thinking we've got this dismembered body, we've got an apartment that's been cleaned, we have an argument that happened prior to her death, and now we have a garage owned by Kevin that's been scrubbed and burned. The circumstantial evidence against Kevin Williams just keeps mounting.
But just when it seems investigators have finally figured out who murdered Traci Todd, the case takes an unlikely turn.
Kevin Williams decides that he wants to talk to police after all, because he thinks he might have information on who killed Traci and why.
So, Mr. Williams, you wanted to tell us a little bit about the evening of September the 13th?
Kevin sits down with police, and right off the bat, he admits that, yes, he did see Traci on the night of September 13th. But he says they were not alone.
Kevin's story about what happened that night is they all went out. After Kevin and Traci went out and had a nice meal, they actually went out afterwards to maybe a live music venue, a bar. And during this, they're all, they're having a good time. They're drinking. It's Kevin, it's Traci, it's two of Kevin's friends.
He says they were hanging out with his buddies, Jamie Freeman and Ivan Dixon.
We was out drinking and, we were all a little tipsy, so I allowed Jamie and Ivan to take Traci home.
He asked Ivan and Jamie to drive Traci home in Kevin's Range Rover. That was his explanation for the receipt, and that was his explanation for his Range Rover being outside of Traci Todd's apartment the next morning.
According to Kevin, Traci has been drinking. Maybe Jamie thought that she could be easily had. She's a good-looking woman.
Don't worry about him, though. He's good. I know how you look at me, okay?
Jamie, you're drunk.
It's okay.
You're drunk, Jamie. Stop.
And according to Kevin, Jamie proceeds to rape her. Traci resists, and one thing leads to another, and she dies in the struggle.
To get to the bottom of Kevin's claims, investigators bring in Jamie Freeman. When Jamie arrives, his arms are wrapped in bandages.
Do you want to tell us what happened to your arm there?
I was started a fire. I was with my girlfriend.
Jamie initially told the police that he was burned when he was on a date with a girl on the lakefront in the middle of the night, and went to start up a fire, and his shirt caught on fire.
It's awfully coincidental that police just found out about this burned out garage. Then Jamie shows up with severe burns to his arm.
As detectives push Jamie for the truth, they unearth a dizzying tale of deceit.
Jamie changed his tune, and when he told the truth about his burns, everything started to unravel.
After searching for clues everywhere from South Loop high-rises to swanky downtown restaurants and secluded nature reserves, investigators in Chicago have determined that on the morning of September 14th, 2000, 34-year-old Traci Todd was brutally murdered, then dismembered, and possibly set on fire.
Detectives have been honing in on Traci's boyfriend, Kevin Williams, but he blames his friend, Jamie Freeman.
So here we have a guy who suffered some burns to his arm, and police just came from a burned out garage where evidence of Traci's murder may have been destroyed. Suddenly, it looks like Jamie Freeman might be behind the murder.
Jamie Freeman tells detectives he got the burns while on a date, but they aren't buying his story.
Look, Jamie, we know you're lying. Now, why don't you start by telling us the truth about what happened that night?
Kevin paid me to burn down the garage. Something about insurance, I just needed a couple bucks, man.
It was said to be an insurance fraud scam where Kevin paid Jamie to burn down his garage.
Kevin picks up Jamie at about 10 o'clock at night. Kevin takes Jamie to the garage. The first thing Jamie notices is that the garage is pristine. Jamie's been in there before, but it is spotless. It looks like it had been cleaned. In the middle of the garage is a gas can. Kevin kicks it over, asks Jamie, "Are you ready?" Jamie says, "Fine." Kevin walks out of the service door. Jamie sees a roll of toilet paper in the garage. He grabs it. He takes a lighter to light the toilet paper, to light the fire. As soon as he strikes that igniter on the lighter, the garage explodes.
Gasoline was partially on his clothes. The blast got all over him.
Jamie gets himself back up. He chases after Kevin and manages to jump into the truck before Kevin can drive away. Jamie has some serious burns.
Wouldn't take me to the hospital, just dropped me off home. And then my mom made me go to the hospital.
Jamie's story certainly explains how he got the burns on his arms, but it also adds another layer of mystery and confusion to the case.
Something else happened in that garage, and that was probably more of the reason of why Jamie was sent to burn down the garage.
They asked Jamie if he helped Kevin kill and dismember Traci in that garage, but Jamie says no.
Jamie tells detectives that Kevin's story that they were all together with Traci and another friend, Ivan Dixon, on the 13th is not true. Jamie was never with the couple. He says that he never drove Traci home, he did not rape her, and he was never in Traci's apartment.
With Kevin and Jamie both pointing the finger at each other, police need to track down Ivan Dixon to get some answers.
The Chicago Police Department, they came across Ivan, and he was able to put a few more pieces together with them.
Ivan Dixon tells police that on September 14th, the same morning Traci's neighbor Marcellus Henderson called 911, Ivan also received a desperate call from Kevin Williams.
The friend's wife answers the phone. And when the wife answers the phone, she looks down at the phone and sees on the caller ID named Traci Todd. And she answers the phone, and it's Kevin on the other end looking for his friend Ivan.
He just kept insisting that he needed my help. He messed up. He wanted me to come meet him on the south side at his house.
Ivan noticed that Kevin had some scratches on his face. Ivan asked Kevin about Traci, and he asked what happened to Traci.
And Kevin said, she's gone. She said, what do you mean? Is she working? Did you guys break up? He said, no, she's gone.
Ivan explains that Kevin admitted to having an altercation with Traci, stemming from a dark truth that had been simmering under the placid surface of their romance for months.
Kevin Williams told Ivan, I fell asleep in her apartment. She found my planner. She found my keys. She found my ring. She found that I was married.
As it turns out, he was already married and had been married for a little while. I think it was a big shock to everybody.
He was living a double life because he was with her and he was with his wife.
What is this?
What are you talking about?
You know what this is. This is a wedding ring.
What are you talking about?
I seen your planner. Ruth? Is that her name?
According to Ivan, Kevin told him that as the argument grew more heated, Traci had a major asthma attack and died.
Ivan said, well, if that's all that happened, just call the police. They'll be able to tell that she had an asthma attack. It was at that point Kevin said, no body, no crime.
Since the medical examiner had already found indication of strangulation, detectives know the asthma attack story is a lie. And between the forensic evidence and the statements of Ivan Dixon and Jamie Freeman, they now have the ammunition to arrest Kevin Williams.
On November 29th, Kevin Williams is arrested and charged with first-degree murder, home invasion, and concealing a homicide.
Finally, the police took these steps to arrest him. He felt relieved that he hopefully wasn't going to get away with what he did.
The family was ready to see Kevin Williams pay for what happened.
But when the case gets to trial, Kevin Williams and his team of lawyers will make a bold move, one that seems to explain away every bit of evidence against him.
He basically turned the tables around.
It was a high-tension trial.
I mean, I was just angry, really angry, you know, because of all this time had gone by and, you know, nothing had been said about Traci from him. I'm glad that he was arrested, but for him still not to say anything about the crime, about her, was a very, very frustrating moment in time with me.
November 6, 2003. More than 3 years after Chicago native Traci Todd vanished from her South Loop apartment, her former lover, Kevin Williams, the man Traci affectionately referred to as Mr. Wonderful, is about to stand trial for her murder.
There was a lot of tension in the courtroom. It was a very high-stakes trial. The courtroom was filled.
In their opening arguments, prosecutors submit for the jury a tale of romantic betrayal that turned into confrontation and eventually murder.
What we argued to the jury is that when Traci found out Kevin was married, when she found his planner, found his ring, she woke him up and confronted him, and their argument started from there.
Traci is irate at this point, and maybe she threatened to tell his wife about their relationship.
You've been playing around looking through my stuff? You have a wife, Kevin?
Kevin probably told Traci something along the lines of, tell her what you want. She's not gonna believe what you have to say. And Traci, with her little insurance package, probably said something like, I've got that receipt from dinner tonight. That's my proof.
Traci has the upper hand, and he's probably thinking that she's about to ruin his life. His carefully crafted web of lies that strung along two women by telling his wife about the affair.
Prosecutors contend Kevin Williams strangled Traci to death, then removed her body from her apartment, wrapping it in the missing Peruvian rug and a sleeping bag.
Prosecutors say he brought her body to the garage where he dismembered her, then dumped her remains in the forest preserve.
According to the state, Kevin then went to great lengths to clean the garage and eventually had his friend Jamie burn it down on September 17th, just 3 days after the murder.
The reason for cleaning the garage would be to get rid of any DNA that might have been in there that might have survived a fire had that garage not been cleaned before the fire was set.
To bolster their claim, prosecutors called to the stand a former tenant of the property.
He said that he used to live at the house with the burned-down garage, and that the day before the fire, Kevin was on the property acting strangely.
Neighbors had seen him wheeling kind of these large bags on this cart from his car to the garage, kind of back and forth. Things just were not adding up.
He saw Kevin inside the garage scrubbing the floor with a very smelly substance. It was the following morning, early next morning, that garage burned down.
The state really did a masterful job of putting a very, very strong circumstantial case together.
When the defense takes the floor, they remind the jury that circumstantial evidence does not a guilty verdict make. And with no direct physical evidence tying Kevin to the murder, they have no choice but to acquit him.
The defense spent a lot of time attacking the circumstantial nature of our case.
They argue that there is no proof that Kevin was there the night that Traci was killed.
To bolster their not guilty argument, Kevin's attorneys make a bold move and let their client take the stand in his own defense. Under oath, Kevin tells the jury how Traci's blood ended up on the floor of her apartment.
Kevin tells the jury that it was his friend, Jamie Freeman, who raped and killed Traci, and that his other friend, Ivan Dixon, could prove it.
Kevin said, I know what happened. I know because I spoke to Ivan the next morning. That phone call between me and Ivan, that was Ivan telling me that Jamie had killed her.
To counter Kevin's testimony, prosecutors call witnesses of their own.
We ended up calling both Jamie and Ivan as rebuttal witnesses to deny not only that they were drinking with Kevin and Traci, but to say they'd never met Traci in their lives. Ivan and Jamie both denied taking Traci home that night.
You could tell that as both sides rested their case, Kevin was feeling confident.
I guess he had put in what he thought was a great show because they were feeling very confident.
Kevin's demeanor was, from the outside, very calm, very collected, very under control.
On November 26th, the jury returns with a verdict.
After about a 3-week trial, on the day before Thanksgiving, the jury was sent to deliberate, and in about 3 hours came back with a guilty verdict.
Kevin was sentenced to 60 years in the Illinois Department of Corrections and is currently serving that sentence. His appeal to the Illinois Appellate Court was denied.
The jury saw through him.